Okay, so I want to give you a bit of background, like why we have decided to run this panel, right? Because this is important. Like in the former discussion, we were underlining how important it is to have the corporates or also represented here, and why they should also have some voice in terms of like cooperating, the way we should shape our ecosystem, like how to structure the cooperation between startups and more advanced like enterprises and corporates. So today we want to discuss that a bit more and try to see whether whether we shall actually foster this type of cooperation. And the Innovative Krakow Forum is actually the third event that we are organizing since I joined Foundation a few months back. And I've noticed that each event offers great networking opportunities, right? There's the option to meet some very interesting people, socialize in general, extend your network. But, networking is all about finding the proper match, right? So you want to find the best business partner for your business. And the startup also want to have this type of relationships, right? Because it's even harder for them to bring the product and service to the market and attract those big players, right? So as an OMG Foundation, we've recently launched this new service that allows us to match the startups with the corporates, and that we want to find the best clients for the products and services that the startups are offering, but also on the other hand, find the partners in a corporate environment that can offer the infrastructure, the products of theirs that can be utilized by the startups. So now we, for instance, have a very good relationship with the Microsoft, right? That is providing the technology like the cloud Azure for our startups as a one of the technologies that they can utilize for their business, and it's growing very in a very nice direction, right? So we already start those relationships, and we want to grow them further. So that's why I decided to invite my panelists today so that they can share some insights on how to do it the best. But before we actually, go into that, I want to ask you guys, like, whether you actually feel we should, foster that cooperation, because I assume that we should, but maybe we should not. So please try to, share your perspective towards that. And but before we start, I want you to, introduce yourself, because you can do it the best. So and tell us more about your background, so that the audience can understand better the background of your question, like your answers, right? So that they can understand from where you come from and why you have this type of insights, right? Ian, would you like to
I'll go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Eoin McCoy is my name. So I'm here as a representative of Aspire, and a quick introduction. Aspire is a representative body that brings together most of what we would consider to be corporate. So most of the large employers in the Krakow region, so business services and technology primarily. That's part of my representation. I also, in my normal day job, I'm head of global services for a company called IG, which is a financial services retail trading business. And I think there's a couple of examples I'm going to share on how and where we've had experiences connecting with startup enterprises in Krakow. I'll say one successful, one not so successful. Then longer story, so I've been in Krakow for the last nearly 20 years, built and run a number of the large employment centres in town, so Sabre, Aon, GE Healthcare, Lumes, IG, and a few more. So, been around for a while.
Yes, short introduction.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, hi guys. My name is Piotr Lipnicki. I'm currently responsible for technology in one of the startups, Reliability Solutions. But my previous background is, as I used to say, on the dark side, so free corporations. And I was working also with startups from, let's say, corporation point of view, where I was startup collaboration lead, running accelerator, and basically I know bits and pieces of both sides, and it depends if we should work startups and corporations together. It really depends. In general, yes, but in specific cases, you might argue.
Yeah, hi guys. Oh, wow. So my name is Filip Mościcki. I'm here as the head of business development and strategy at ArcDesk. It's a startup here from Krakow. We do workflow and process management for for heavy industry companies. My experience, I've worked both in corporations, I've worked in large companies, small companies, family-run business. I've had my own startups. I've run a couple different startups into the ground too successfully. So I know a little bit about all the things that we'll touch upon, but I think that from my perspective right now, it's all about the value. So I think we'll touch up on that a lot more during this conversation.
Hi, I'm Wojtek Ozog, or Wojciech Ozog, depends how you spell it. I'm working for the Ericsson. Ericsson is doing, here in Krakow, we have the R&D center, and we have about 900 people doing mainly the software for all the mobile networks, from the 2G for the 3G, 4G, and now, which is introduced in all over the world, the 5G. And I'm head of Ericsson Garage. It's our internal incubator for innovation, but we also cooperate with the startups and academias and, of course, our potential and future customers for the new products. So, and I'm in the software development area for almost 20 years. So.
Wow, thank you so much. What do you guys think? Like, shall we facilitate and shall we foster the cooperation between two words? Like, or is it working already properly? And all the startups have the proper access to the corporates, and there's no need to facilitate it further. Do we have enough of corporate representatives in the room? Do we have enough of startup representatives here? Like, what do you think? Like, how do you assess the current state of the cooperation? Obviously, from the perspective of your institutions, right? That's one thing, and the other, like, whether we should actually develop those type of relationships. Like, how do you think, Eoin? Or
To start, okay. Is there enough of a connection? No. I think it's quite simple. I think you'll see examples where there are companies, enterprise, corporates in Krakow, not just Krakow, but across the region. I think there are some companies who have experience in doing this, who have incubator structures, who have kind of business relationship details in place. But I think they're the exception. I think in general, if you step back, you have to acknowledge that there's not enough understanding. When we sit down and we talk about the dark side, it's hard to have a mutually, structured conversation. I think there should be one. I think there's an awful lot that corporates have to offer. I think there's an awful lot that corporates have to learn, and I think the same applies on a startup type environment. So I think there's definitely a lack of structure, and for me, I think there's a lot of value and a lot of interest in having structure in place.
Having similar opinion, even though there are some connections, but it's never enough. And usually it's about the people. You need to have the right people on both sides in order to facilitate this cooperation. And for example, when I was working with startups, I was always trying to emphasize, guys, ask money corporations for all of you. Don't do anything for free. No pilots for free, no POCs for free. Ask for the money. The corporations are for you there just to pay for it. And it's always like in life, if you value something, if you give a price for that, then people tend to think it's having actually a value. If you give it a free, even if you want to prove a point, then in many occasions it just deteriorates, and people don't recognize it as something really, really good, even though it is. But there's a lot of buzz going around, and there are issues in communications. Two different words, two different requirements coming from both parties. So this leads to the conclusion, at least from my side, that we need to have such workshops, such meetings in order to facilitate, first of all, networking, and the second thing is to get more and more people involved from both sides.
That's funny, Piotr, what you said, because actually from my experience working at Azimut for all those years was that the corporates are actually the only clients that are expecting to achieve receive the POCs for free, right? The other startups or the other smaller players are willing to pay, but the corporates are always, at least from my experience, in many cases they are expecting the free POCs, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it for free, but just having a contract. Okay, we do it POC for free, but if we reach the KPIs, then we get a contract, and that's it.
The freemium people must hate you. No, but I agree to some extent. I think, for example, for us, it might surprise you, but heavy industry is mostly corporations, is mostly gigantic companies that are pretty much small countries that, you know, it's incredibly hard getting into the right place. So from my experience, and it's been similar with other cases, it's often a stroke of luck when you meet the right person who gets you in the room. And oftentimes, if you are a startup that bases its service on value and you can bring and show and prove that value, you will be able to sell because it's obvious. If you can make their life easier, and of course sometimes it has to be a lot easier, sometimes it has to be a little easier, it's really a done deal after you get to a certain level of the person at a corporation. From the other side, looking at startups, I think that's one of the biggest problems a lot of startups have is proving or showing that value. They kind of have an idea and they feel that their idea is the best, as every startup does, and they're really surprised when big companies don't want to throw money at them and more have expectations from them. So yeah, I think from my experience, the most important thing is just getting to talk with the right people and then being able to prove what you believe in and what you can do.
I definitely agree that the very first stage is crucial because firstly the startup need to prove that the product, the idea they have is something which is valuable for the company. So firstly it needs to address some pain point. Otherwise, the corporate will be not be really interesting in implementing this. But if it will solve the pain point, definitely the corporate will have money. And on the very first stage, it's easier to get the money from the financing from the other programs, like from the union funds and this kind of the external financing, not from the corporate, because corporates are more used to the huge financing, which takes some time, but also needs some proof of concept at the very first stage. And it's the barrier, the entry barrier to start the serious thinking about implementing the solution, not just the proof of concept.
Okay, but if the proof of concepts are have been done with other clients, then that's sufficient, right?
It helps a lot. For every startups. If the startups has the clients already, it's make all the conversation, starting the conversation easier. If the startups comes with the idea, okay, we have the idea, but we don't have any proof of concept. It's much hard to start the conversation. So.
Okay, so you were saying that it's very important to find the right person at the corporate side, right? That having this champion or this right person that guides you through the path is very important. But how to find this person, like how to reach it, like how to identify the structures of corporates are, very complex. So how to navigate through that? Like what's your advice here?
So I would say that nowadays there are those, let's say, super positions which are quite recognizable. If anyone is a digital officer or someone like that, or you have even those parts of the corporations are with the funds. So in many cases there are investing funds that the corporation are having money and are investing, maybe not even in their core business because they just do investing to gain money. So I would look there. If you do not know the person, just try to find that part of the organization which is involved in that. But in many cases there are let's say, startup facilitators at the corporation right now. It wasn't like that a couple of years ago, but now you have like startup collaboration lead or whatever, startup advisor and so on, or even the corporations are having their own accelerators or are getting into the accelerators, and then you have a innovation manager and so on, so on. So this kind of people you should look for, either via LinkedIn or through official websites. And I have to say that more and more people are appearing at the conferences or meetings like that. So even the CEOs of the companies, the big ones, like in Poland, it's Tauron, PGNiG, Orlen, are coming, and they are just coming to, let's say, startups. And I have this problem. Can you solve it? It's quite blunt, but sometimes it happens, and then you have a lucky meeting, yeah, but otherwise you have those channels. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, because it's challenging to find those pinpoints, right? Like now, thanks to GovTech that we'll be presenting like after the panel, we have transparent way of seeing the pain point that the corporate is having, right? But how to find those pinpoints when we do not have this type of opportunity that the corporate is actually publishing it somewhere, right? Or actually speaking about that at the conference or something. How to identify?
I think, so for me, from a corporate point of view, I think there's a responsibility a corporate needs to take on a little bit more than we do today. I think if we can identify the innovation digital officer, accelerator, hub, that's good. But the reality is, if you think about, let's say, talk about Krakow from an ecosystem point of view, the reality is most of our corporates don't have P&L decision makers here in the city. But from my point of view, I think our corporates in this city should take responsibility to help make that connection happen. Whether or not there's a formal structure or not, I think that's one of the roles I believe that the larger employers here in the city haven't played a good enough job on yet. Is there something in it for them? Maybe, maybe not. But underneath it all, I think there's something in it from a Krakow brand point of view. So if you start thinking about what is the material benefit on a corporate and a startup connecting, there may be some product benefit, but actually the baseline benefit to start with has to be some location brand point of view. So what role can a corporate play to help develop the startup communities and the capability of the community, even if there's no product monetary value in it, not yet exactly, but unless they help plant some of the seeds, talk back to the previous panel, there's not going to be a Skype type exit in Krakow in the next 5 years or 10 years. I mean, I think the corporates play a role in helping to develop the maturity of that ecosystem. Yeah. And I think that's kind of my point. I look at the startups that we've worked with in IG. I mean, I've found them personally, or they've come to me because they've kind of known me personally. Yeah. But it's up to me to kind of help navigate into the corporate structure, figure out what is the solution that they have. Coming with a solution without knowing what the problem is one of the classic situations we deal with. But like I said, I think bottom line, I think the corporates need to play a different role, or certainly locally play a role in helping being visible and being part of the startup ecosystem here, and vice versa.
I can only add that we as the corporate, we have on the corporate level and also on the local level, because our structure like Ericsson garages are very close to the R&Ds in different countries. So like here in Poland, we have both in Krakow and in Łódź the structure for the innovation. And we are closely cooperate with the local organization like Krakowski Park Technologiczny or Łódzka Strefa Ekonomiczna in bringing the startup, maybe sometimes not directly to us, but to our clients, because we are very often we are an enabler, just matching our clients and the startups using our technology. So.
Just to touch upon two things. One, with what you said a second ago, is that I think that corporations need to realize that these type of communities, startup communities, it's like kindergarten for them. They're raising their future, suppliers or companies who will buy from them, and that's an amazing opportunity for them. The other thing from a startup side, and I again have to press point on us. We have to be aware enough of our products to know who to reach, because in some companies, like you mentioned, Piotr, you will have the right person who will be there, whose job is solely to kind of find us. But in other companies, it's either a person whose job title is absolutely, it seems irrelevant, or there is not such a person. And then with those companies, what you need to do is you have to know, okay, so whose problem inside of the company am I solving? Who will understand me best? And for example, with us, ArcDesk does so many different things, but we found that most of the time, the higher level procurement managers are the ones that tend to get us and what we do and how we can help them the most. So at some point, with our marketing, we decided to target those, and we had an amazing turnaround. So it's just a question of knowing yourself well enough to be able to kind of locate those opportunities within the company that will, as you mentioned, Owen, will help you reach the right people. Because it's never, I mean, I've had one instance in my life where I literally wrote to every board member of Unilever, and they got me into a meeting within 3 hours. It was insane. Like, I guessed the emails, I wrote them on LinkedIn, I just did a brute force approach because we really wanted to get that business. And it worked. Yeah, no, it worked. So it was absurd. It was our last chance. We tried it through official channels, we tried it through unofficial channels, then I did, a Hail Mary, and it worked. But it works once in a lifetime. But most of the time it's just being patient and kind of working your way in, getting the right person, and then, capitalizing on that opportunity.
So if I could comment on that, and you just described the basic of sales that startups have to get. So if you go through the door, then don't let you in, go through the window. That's the basic. And what you said also is try to identify whose problem can you solve. This is one thing. The second thing is try to find the guy who's paying for solving those problems, because it can be that one department is having problems and they want them solved, but the others are deciding. So try to identify your peers on different levels in the organization, because if the final word is going for the CEO of the company that you are working with, you need to have them on board as well. If it's something that is being mingled around, it can end in a situation that after half a year of negotiations proposing product solutions, he just says no because he was not on the deck when it was happening. So yeah, there is a bit of politics there, especially with the big corporations, but you just need to have it in mind.
Okay, great. So can you tell us a bit more, for instance, Wojtek, maybe you could share, like what type of solutions or challenges you currently have for the startups, to be very practical, right? Maybe some startup at the audience can solve some of your problems.
Very practically, we have two areas. One area is very strictly technical, and it's all the technical solution around the 5G and especially the antennas and the spectrums, how to allocate. So it's very technical problem. And the second one is all the challenges our clients has, how to implement and how to use the 5G technology, and how they could be successful with using our technology. So, and it's the area for most of the startups. So.
But you've mentioned once during our previous conversations that you're looking for some disruptive technologies. Like, what could that be?
What it could be? For example, one of the Polish startups has the idea how to make the use of the, it's not the gravel, we know how, I forgot the name of the material, but the material...
Graphene? Right?
Oh,
I don't know how it's
graphene.
In English.
It's the composite of the graphene. It's actually not graphene, but it's very close. But the composite of the graphene to isolate the spectrum in the hardware, and it's on very early stage. We are the company which comes from the university, from the academia environment, and we are very keen how they will succeed in this. So at this stage, for us, for the Ericsson, we are on the very beginning of the path, but we have the close conversation with them, and they have the direct access to all the guys who are dealing with this kind of the problems on the central level from Stockholm. And once they will succeed, we will be very interesting in going forward with that solution. But at this stage, it's too early. It's the good idea, but they need to work it further. So.
Okay, so there are some minimum requirements that the startups has to meet in order to, cooperate with you.
Yes, at this stage they are claiming that they are able to provide such a material, and what we ask them, okay, but we need you to provide some evidence and some facts, because it's too early. So it's just only your words that you are on the right track. But of course we want you to succeed, but we need some more evidence to cooperate.
Okay, good. Can you share with us some examples of the failures that you have experienced in terms of like cooperating, both like that one of the startups that wanted to reach out to you but you weren't interested, or some, on the other side, like you wanted to work with some corporates, you were spending months on developing the relationship and it didn't go now to the direction that you wanted. Can you share with us this type of case studies and maybe tell us the lessons learned coming out of those?
I'll start just as an example. So I had two that I was going to discuss today, and one is successful and the other has not been. And maybe I'll start with the not so successful version, because I think it's a good example of what startups need to think about when they're approaching a corporate. So the background was, it's actually a Krakow startup, and I think they're going to be successful. But they'd approached us because they saw us as being essentially a large player in their space, and think about it as an intelligent financial trading bot. All right, so an AI-driven financial services trading engine. Now, in a financial services world, as corporates get into the world of regulation and boring bureaucracy and everything else that goes with it, it's real, it's necessary, it's part of the industry and the world that we deal with. These guys had absolutely no awareness of this, no appreciation of it. They wanted to engage with us. They wanted us to provide them with a financial pricing feed for free, which was interesting. Without really understanding what that meant for us as a company. So in the sense that they actually had a technically very, very strong solution, a very good idea, but were really, really weak on, well, not the technical know-how, but the business, commercial, regulatory environment. And I went through 4 different meetings with them, and the penny still hadn't clicked that what they were going to offer would land somebody in our company in jail if we ever engaged with them in a fully blown way. And the idea was they were, starting off on a crypto trading detail, which today is an unregulated product, therefore was fine. But their idea was, well, we can take the same algorithms and use them onto regulated products. So I'm going, yes, you can, but yeah, and everything was fine until the bot. And so that detail of being aware of the market you're going into, understanding what your solution can offer, but actually understanding your marketplace into a more detailed specificity is quite important. And that's the downside of our corporate world. Regulation and rules and structures are there not because we like them, but they're generally there for a reason. They're necessary, and you need to start to understand that. Looking at you have technical solutions without proper market understandings.
That's very interesting.
And if I can add to this, actually you can distinguish the company, the startups who are after such a conversation with the corporate world, because they are well prepared, better prepared, and they are well aware about what the business really are, not only about the technical part, but what are the limitation, regulation, and also the opportunities, because the limitation and regulation gives the new opportunities for them. But knowing them is crucial.
Yeah, I have the same comments here. For example, the big players, corporations have vast amount of data that in theory they can just shoot at startups. And if you are from a AI-driven, optimizing, data-driven and so on, this is like a golden egg for you. But in many cases, startups don't take into account that this is like super secret data, and from regulatory point of view, you cannot share it so freely. And on the other hand, the lead times when you get actually the data is not how they imagine. Sometimes you can wait for half a year or even for a year. Or if you have a super cloud solution for a chemical plant or whatsoever, and you can do everything, optimizing and so on, but the guy says, I cannot put any data into the cloud, and your solution works only in the cloud, then you are busted basically, and you don't understand the market. So this is also an important comment which I would, and we also had such experience that we came to an agreement. We were almost there in order to provide a solution for one of customers in food and beverage, but it didn't click because there was a problem in decision making in exposing the data for us. And although we have the possibility to put in the cloud or on premise on server, doesn't matter. Still, getting the data was being blocked by one of the managers, and he just said no, and that's it. You can do the solution, but you will not get the data. But we need the data to make the solution works. But for your solution, then, and this finished the conversation. So what I'm trying to say, try to always evaluate what are the walls that you will see on your way to developing your solution, and that's it. Try to understand the environment, like you said.
Okay, so I'll look from the other side again. So what kind of failures as a startup we've had talking to corporations? And I think there's two major categories, and one is, I would say, solvable, the other one isn't. Starting with the one that isn't really solvable, it's mergers, restructurization, anything that happens within a company that just kills the last year and a half of your work. And it happens, and it's not something that you as a startup can influence. I mean, if you can influence that, you're doing really good, and you're probably not going to be a startup for long, and you're going to be, bigger than Skype. But if you can't, and usually can't influence these types of decisions, you will find yourself at daunting times because you will have spent a lot of time usually getting a really good relationship with that company, getting everything ready, and then it being put on hold for, if you're lucky, half a year, if you're unlucky, forever. Because new people have new ideas and have a new agenda. And again, it's not your fault, but it doesn't matter if it brings value. If it doesn't, sometimes it's just politics. The other one, which one is solvable, it's communication. And I think that it's not only with corporations, but it is the most for us. It's all about making sure that you do keep it as warm as possible, and you don't kind of put anything onto the corporation. From my experience, the more you put on to any client, the bigger the chance you will fail, because you are the one pursuing a deal. They are the one that are kind of letting you do it. They're the pretty girl. So unless you really make sure that you're the one that has to follow up, you're the one that sets the dates, you are the one that gets into those meetings, the rooms. And I don't mean be horrible, stalk her on Instagram and do all that. I mean really just kind of make sure that you're not wasting any time, because, and we've had it over and over again, we've had companies fall out of contact with us, stop writing back, do a lot of different things because they, for example, put it on hold, and that would have been fine because you would have known how to catch up with them, and then you wouldn't, and you would miss our opportunity because in 6 months' time they had a month which they used to get a solution that was similar or something else, and you lost it completely. So those are like kind of the two things that I've seen startups do right and wrong, and happen to startups to just fail on that. In that arena, and like I said, one I believe is solvable. It's all about the ethics, the way you work, your process. The other one, it's just sheer luck and hoping for the best.
If I can comment on this, for the startups, the framework of any acceleration program is sometimes very safe because it gives you the structure, the time, and how the process looks like. So this is the antidotum for the cooperation between the startups and the corporation. And if you are talking about the structure that it's changed, the reorganization, it's always the way to forecast. For example, in Ericsson, is every 2 years. So.
Yeah. So from my experience, for instance, when I'm working with the corporate clients at Estimate, one of the strategies that I use is that I try to involve as many people as I can on the other side to prevent that, right? So I've also experienced that a lot.
Hoping one stays.
the changes of the structures, but if you put and not only if you have not a relationship not only with one champion at the corporate side, but if you involve at least 4 or 5 people on the other side, then the chances of them being involved later on in the similar projects are higher, right? So it's good to have more people on your side and pitch to as many people as you can, right? So that you can extend those networks. So that's my antidote to that. Okay, guys. I think that we are closely to the end. So how would you like to summarize our discussion? Like, what should be the next steps? Like, maybe you could advise something for OMG in terms of like the next steps towards better supporting matchmaking of the startups and corporates. Can you give us some advice or comment in any other way for the next steps for the future to better facilitate the relationships between both worlds?
So I think I'll put my Aspire hat on to answer this one. I think we have an opportunity. So there essentially are 2 well-organized communities representing on one side our corporate communities in Krakow, and on the other side our startup communities. And certainly it's a conversation Paul and I from the OMGKRK side and Aspire have had for the last 18 months, 2 years. I think it's one of those conversations I think from my side we just need to continue to have, because there are interests on both sides. I think there's an interest in really developing an ecosystem that reflects what Krakow as a city can deliver. And we figure out, what I see too often is we have on our corporate side, we have lots of companies who are interested in participating. We actually have, think of HSBC or any of the banks, they actually have investment funds. And I know for a fact that they're sitting in Krakow going, we'd love to be able to use them, but we don't know where to go in Krakow. And likewise, you have the same kinds of conversations on the startup side. So I think there's a lot of interest there. I think we do have to have more Aspire participation in events like this, and more startup participation in Aspire events. I think then you start to see some of the overlap between the 2 communities starting to stick a little bit better than it has done over the last couple of years.
Okay, let me speak out of turn this time, because I really want to touch upon what you just said. I think that a key thing to have right now is a co-ownership of the community. And it's as you said, right now we do have 2 communities and they have their own ownership, and they kind of, they looking opposite ways, or they're looking the same way, just not seeing each other. And this is actually on a conversation I've had with Dominika previously. I really believe that OMGKRK should be in some portion owned by corporations, because they will be the major clients, or they will be serviced by startups. They're basically going, to be, as I said previously, bringing up their future, their future technologies or solutions or whatever it might be. So I think it's just really important to stop treating it as 2 separate things and think of a way to kind of say, okay, so we own this little piece of the cake, and how do we make this really work and function in a proper way, rather than just keep functioning as it has for the past years. And there needs to be not a lot, but there needs to be some risk, and people who are willing to invest, because it's going to be an investment of time, of resources, of all that, and just a really, really good vision of where it's going to go and how we're going to get there.
Yeah, I would add more to that we should somehow also couple the third leg, which is the VCs, basically, which are driving in many cases the startups, helping them from various angles, mentoring, investing, of course, and so on. So if we have on the table those 3 and we make it all together, it will spin even faster. From my experience, if a corporation sees that there is a VC that already invested in a startup, the doors are opening like crazy in many cases. The discussions are going faster. No, not always the case, but it helps that someone sees that you have some big guys behind your shoulder. So just take into account those 3, and that's it. And network more.
Okay.
I see a network, of course, and also as a matchmaker on a very early stage for the startups, just to bring them on a higher level and to allow them to have the first client, either for commercial product or for the proof of concept, which has some financing, not to put this on the startup, but to help them also find the funds.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for that. On my side, I promise that I will try to facilitate still the cooperation with Aspire so that we can try to make it more closely and try to come up with some action points for the next phase.